What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. This is episode number 87, where we are going to go over another topic. But why does that make sense? Because this is a remix of that, our GAP Redux numero dos, featuring none other than me, your co-host Jason, and Will, sitting across from me.
Yeah, it's about time that we redid some of the older content. For reference, episode 2 is the main focus of today. We're going to be reduxing that episode, and that one came out over 3 years ago. Yeah. Actually, I mean, it's the second episode. We started January 2021, so yeah. Been a long time, and it's about time that we revisit it as well, because that episode we talked a lot about Weekly Shonen Jump, or in general,
And the big three,
yeah, a lot of like the sort of scene in terms of how anime was working, how things were getting serialized in terms of the manga front, and what those were going to be getting adaptations. And so it's pretty good to sit back and look at how things have developed over the last 3 years, seeing the state of Shonen Jump and what the future holds, or maybe the lack of. There's a lot of uncertainty, but in terms of like the uncertainty itself, it's more on the negative than the positive. Maybe we'll break it down and see.
Yeah, we'll break it down, and I think also the timing of everything all is obviously very deliberate, because there is a lot of, as Will implied, a lot of developments in recent months that has kind of, you could say, we're on the precipice or the tipping point of maybe a change in identity of Shonen Jump as a whole, if we could be so bold. And maybe the back then, the big three, is it really, could we even have a current modern big three? Is that even necessary? Is that excessive? And also, don't forget all these developments of Jump Plus, Manga Plus, AI, digital versus physical. All of these things have culminated such that we think it's like not only an episode that one of the first things that Will and I talked about, but also because all of these things have now come full circle in many ways, such that there is a lot of new information. Maybe not change the narrative comparatively to like even other mediums like video games with physical and digital, but nonetheless, we now have concrete evidence, and even some of our speculations have come to fruition, right?
Yeah. So I think for the course of this episode, we'll be mainly focusing on Weekly Shonen Jump, the print magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a section, and we will obviously mention Jump Plus, Manga Plus throughout, but this is mainly a remix of Shonen Jump, which is from episode 2, which is about the big three and the magazine themselves.
Yeah, and just like for some further clarification as well, this is for Weekly Shonen Jump, the Shueisha magazine. There are other Weekly Shonens. There's like Weekly Shonen's magazine, which I believe is Kodansha, and Weekly Shonen Sunday, which is Shogakukan.
Yeah.
There's also like
the Kadokawa one.
I don't know about Kadokawa. There's a Nakita Shoten one, which is Weekly Shonen Champion, but that one is lesser known, so we're not really covered too much about that one.
Yeah. Again, we are also well known for definitions and disclaimers, so we're just going to go over a couple of things in addition to what Will has already clarified. We went through some of our research. We will reference the ones that we find are relevant or interesting for guys if you want to check it out or dive deeper than we are letting on, because there's a lot to go over. But most of our data is from the most current year, is 2022. I mean, that's just a lot of the way it is with a lot of, whether it's academic research or just data gathering, because you can't get the year of 2024, for example, because it hasn't finished yet, or the preceding year, because it takes time for people to compile the data. So that's why the latest reliable data that we have is from 2022.
Yeah, but we will be giving like a 10-year spread. So things that happened, like, from the beginnings of like 2012, maybe a little bit of like 2011, all the way up to the latest available year, which is 2022. Yeah.
There's also something I would like to mention, which is 2 dates, or 2 years really, which is 2014 and 2019. And even though we said that we will not focus a lot on digital platforms, we want to just give you guys kind of a reference point, because Jump Plus and Manga Plus, we kind of say that interchangeable because it kind of is. But to be clear, Jump Plus takes place in Japan primarily, and it's founded in 2014, which I actually did not know it was that that long ago. I thought it was way more recent, which also makes sense because the second year you have to bear in mind is 2019, when Manga Plus was available. And Manga Plus is essentially the more international version of Jump Plus. Mm-hmm. But that's why whenever we say Jump Plus, Manga Plus, we always either put it together or we use it interchangeably, because they are essentially the same thing, but for different regions, being domestic in Japan versus international global. So let's go over, unfortunately,
the big bad, which is, let's talk about money, baby.
Yeah. And it comes to no surprise that since 2011 till 2022, Weekly Shonen Jump is losing a shit ton of money. Not only that, I would argue that its relevance is getting lesser and lesser. Will, when you were growing up, what was like your first memories of Shonen Jump?
It would have been, the big three. It would have been like reading like Bleach, Naruto, One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, and also just going to little manga cafes, bookstores, and you're supposed to buy the manga, but I would just go next door, grab a bag of chips, read the manga because nobody would stop me from reading it, and then when I'm done, I just put it down.
Yeah, it's like the Borders thing, like the Borders bookstore thing of you sit down and you read and then you just peace out in an air-conditioned room in the middle of the summer. And with manga cafes, it is a thing that is more applicable in Asia, like in Hong Kong for us growing up, than I guess in the West, right? So even though the narrative of physical medium, even in things like video games or DVDs, have significantly decreased in sales and revenue, which is unsurprising, we will go over why the magazine is also declining in terms of revenue as well. And I think the thing that is really kind of scary is when we look at their sales, which you can go to their Wikipedia website of Shonen Jump's revenue, which is where we got our data from for 2011 till 2022. They have only, in terms of profitability, two, what I would say, green months. Green years, sorry. Everything else is in the red. So they've been losing money, on top of the fact that their cost per magazine went from 240 yen in 2011 to now 290.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well, right? The two profitable years you mentioned, specifically the years of 2012 to 2013, as well as 2019 to 2020, whilst those were profitable years, actual sales numbers had continued to drop. The only reason why there was a profit was the fact that they increased prices.
Yeah.
Right? So it went from 240 yen to 250 yen. Thus, you were able to see a decent profit, but sales had dropped by well over 1 million from the year before. And then in 2019 to 2020, yes, they were making some money, but that was also because they jumped the price from 260 yen to 290 yen.
Yep.
Which is significant. That's more than a 10% increase.
And to put things into perspective, honestly, 50 yen difference, even if you consider inflation,
the weaker yen as well,
is extremely insignificant.
If you were to talk about the actual price right now for 290 yen, if we were to revert to Hong Kong dollars, it's $15.
Yeah,
$15. So basically $1.50, $2 in America.
Yeah, and we're just looking at the numbers now. In 2011 to 2012, weekly circulation, so every week, because it's Weekly Shonen Jump, is 2.8 million units. Fast forward 10 years, you get 1.3.
Yep, it's less than half.
That's insane, right? And then when you look at sales, right? So don't forget, over the 10 years, the price of the issues or the magazine has technically increased, right? You can say it's negligible, but technically it has increased, right? 35 wait, is that billion?
Yeah.
For 35 billion yen in 2011, 2012 to 19.7 billion yen in 2021, 2022. Regardless of the conversion rate in terms of, to give you context in terms of your local currency, you can just look at that number and go, wow, that is a huge ass difference.
They're making half as much money as they did back in 2011, 2012, despite increasing the cost of manga by 50 yen.
Yeah. And look, you might say to me and will go like, bro, that's no shit, Sherlock. Like, you can say that about any physical medium. So why is this any different? Yeah, you're right. Dear listener, you're not wrong. Also, Jump Plus, Manga Plus obviously has been taking and shifting a lot of their hype properties. I think an infamous one, not infamous because it's not like
well-known,
it's well known, is Chainsaw Man moving over to Jump Plus, Manga Plus. But I think the thing that we have to bear in mind is, despite not knowing the digital sales or like having those kinds of insider knowledge, it also is, I don't know, it's kind of sad.
It's very sad, and like you said, right? People will be like, no shit, Sherlock, things are getting expensive, people's spending power is dropping, wages are not matching in terms of like a livable like salary anymore. So therefore it makes sense that, they're not getting as much money from physical sales anymore. But what it also means is that when you talk about manga, you can't talk about anime without manga. A lot of it is derived from the original source. And when you start seeing the medium itself drying up the well that, provides them the financial support to continue making this shit, you got to think about what's going to happen in the future with all of our anime. Are we going to be only seeing more original stuff? Are we going to see more just of the big properties like your Oshinokos, your Demons? Don't forget Demon Slayer as well, right? Demon Slayer, you might be thinking, they just released, the Hashira training arc, right? Well, don't forget that the manga itself had finished like 2-3 years ago, and they're still riding that momentum. But you can only do so much with that, right? You still need to be able to have a continuous source of content for you to be able to adapt. And if the studio, if the publisher itself does not continue to, drive a profit, or at least does not have increasing profits, that well is going to dry up. We're not going to be able to see more adaptations. We're just going to be seeing more of the same stuff.
Oh, but Will, isn't right now like One Piece is super hot with the live action, and also the anime and manga are doing really well? What about like My Hero Academia is airing right now, or JJK? Listen, you're all right about those things. The issue, as Will mentioned, is if you look like ahead several years, which we will get into, all of those series might not exist anymore in terms of like they're done, they're completed.
Yep. My Hero Academia is rumored to be finishing up very, very soon. Jujutsu Kaisen is not that far off either. One Piece, I mean, it was only a couple years ago that we were saying that Edo Ochida, I think that's his name, is going to be finishing One Piece within 5 years. I think it's now like year 2 or 3 of that timeline. So, yeah, we're not going to be getting a lot of One Piece, My Hero Academia, Chainsaw Man maybe, Jujutsu Kaisen. Those things will end. And when those things end, what do you have left? Right? Are we just going to be okay with mediocre adaptations of mediocre manga? That's the concern that people will have when we start talking about the state of the manga industry, particularly when we're talking about WSJ, like arguably the biggest shonen syndication within manga.
Yeah, I think the issue, okay, no pun intended there, the issue that is facing Weekly Shonen Jump that is actually not necessarily directly related to Weekly Shonen Jump is the association it has with, I guess, the greater zeitgeist or popular culture. If you don't really know that much about...
sorry, it's Oda, not Edo. Oda. Eiichiro, yeah.
Yeah. Oda Sensei. Yeah. But if you don't really know that much about manga or don't really care about manga, again, I think manga is great and you should read it if you have the time or the capacity. But if you're like an anime-only watcher, fine, right? But you have heard of Shonen Jump. You might not even have read a single chapter or a single panel. You know of Shonen Jump. And I would argue for some people, they think that the shonen magazine demographic is all from Weekly Shonen Jump. A misconception for sure. However, I would argue that a lot more people than you might think actually has that conception.
When you think Shueisha, you immediately think Weekly Shonen, right? But it's like, Kodansha, Kadokawa, Shikakugan and all that, but you don't necessarily think Weekly Shonen, even though they themselves have their own Weekly Shonen magazines, right? Like Weekly Shonen Magazine, Weekly Shonen Champion, Weekly Shonen Sunday, right? But most people know Jump.
Yep.
Like, you can't talk about Shueisha without Jump.
Yep.
And that's the current state we're in, where if you let's bring it back a bit too. When we're talking about anime, yes, anime is incredibly popular, but it's also not super profitable. A lot of times, companies are at a loss when making anime because anime is the main driver for manga sales.
Or their source or light novel or merchandise, right? But absolutely, people, including us, sometimes tend to forget that anime's main purpose, or at least traditionally speaking, its sole purpose, was to promote the source material, to get more revenue, to get more eyeballs on the IP. Maybe the anime itself doesn't even earn money because it's a loss leader.
That's why then you have, like, your Hero Academias, your One Pieces, your Narutos, making a multitude of movies. So those productions can be profitable, right? But not every anime series or like manga series or light novel series has the luxury of being turned into a profitable movie.
Right.
Right? Like, not everyone is a Detective Conan, right? There's like
a long running.
There's like 18 or 19 of those movies.
Or Hajime no Ippo, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're just not going to have that many One Piece type IPs that can stand the test of time, right? The traditional, so to speak, golden age big three is, of course, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. And, of course, Bleach has ended. You can talk about their anime with Thousand Year Blood War, but the manga has ended. Naruto, obviously, you have Boruto, but technically Naruto and Naruto Shippuden has ended. So it's only One Piece left, and that is kind of almost like at the end of that road too. Sure.
I mean, it's been running for 27 years.
That's crazy, right? That's like JoJo level, Berserk level kind of like legacy.
Yeah.
And good, right? You have that, but when it's gone, what are you going to do? And
that's probably why you have the One Piece remake. That's probably why you have the One Piece live action.
Yeah.
So that you're able to at least know that whilst the end is nigh, you are able to continue milking it for as much time as possible before it completely ends. And I bet that once the One Piece manga is finished, you're still going to see One Piece stuff around. I mean, you still see like Naruto-themed like attractions and restaurants and cafes, despite the manga being done like well over 10 years ago.
Yeah, because at that point it becomes like a cultural phenomenon. It becomes an identity of just the quote-unquote golden age of anime. Like how you people how we all listen to classic rock, but nowadays technically Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears are also classic pop, which is kind of crazy to think about, but honestly, it is classic at that point, right?
Yep.
Like Backstreet Boys type stuff. But going back to Jump, right? So, okay, we've talked all this doom and gloom. We talked about all that stuff. But what do they have right now on their lineup?
I mean, if you want to continue the doom and gloom, let's fucking go, man.
Yeah. Did I say that I was going to stop? No.
So we, of course, already talked about, three of the big mainstays of its current lineup, which is One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Jujutsu Kaisen. Then you have a bunch of other stuff that, some of them are relatively hype enough to get anime adaptations. Some of them are on the verge of getting adaptations, and some of them are they literally only just released like in the past year. So just to quickly run over them, you've got Mission Yozakura Family, which does have an adaptation. Burn the Witch,
aired right now as we speak for spring 2024.
Burn the Witch, which was like that little offshoot that Tita Kubo did, which is still set in like the world of Bleach. That one had like a 3-episode anime adaptation,
and I think it's like back and forth in terms of serialization and hiatus. I think that's partly due to because of the relationship
Yeah.
that Kubo had with Shueisha. So
There's also Me and Roboco, which dropped out of nowhere a adaptation last year, not very well received.
6.80,
Yeah.
which is when 7.9K members is pretty abysmal, to be fair.
Yep.
Undead Unluck for fall 2023. Will and I's most favorite anime of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sarcasm, right?
Blue Box, that one also has an adaptation.
Yep. I'm very excited for that. And just to tease a little bit, Will and I will be covering that for future ASAP.
Elusive Samurai, that one also will be getting an adaptation. It's already confirmed it will be. We just don't know when it's going to come out. We have covered that though for ASAP before.
Yep. Going to be done by Cloverworks.
That one's the interesting one, yeah.
Yep. And then there is a lot of like other ones that, to be honest, Will and I haven't really read it or covered it. But
there's one too, which is just this past week, Sakamoto Days.
Yep.
That one is finally getting an adaptation, despite it having released over 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, like quite a time ago.
Yeah, 2020 actually. Yeah.
And literally the news of it getting an anime adaptation for winter 2025, which is quite soon.
Yeah, January 2025. So about 7 months from now.
And we literally found out like a couple of days ago, like a week ago or something like that.
Yep.
And like, so that's off the presses.
So these are mangas that people know about, people have seen adaptations of, or maybe have seen the news of getting adaptations. Then you have stuff like Witch Watch, which I think would be getting a it's the most likely next candidate, I suppose, to get an adaptation.
I read a couple of chapters of it, and it was okay.
Yeah. Then there was.
I'm surprised it's still standing.
Then there's Akane Banashi, which you have read and you really like. I haven't read yet, but that one, like, I think a lot of people are trying to push for that one to get adapted as well.
I would definitely, especially after Sakamoto Days, that would be my next one.
Then you're talking about stuff that people don't really know a whole lot about, like Green Greens, Kagura Bachi, Kill Blue, Nua's Exorcist, Shadow Eliminators, Astro Royale, Cycle Biordi, Dear Anemone, Kyokuto Necromance, and Super Psychic Policeman Chojo.
So all those series that Will just rattled off are series that were serialized in either 2023 or 2024.
Yeah, in fact, like the Green Greens being the oldest of them. Oh, no, actually, no. It was Kill Blue. That one came out in April 2023. So a lot of this stuff only released in the past year.
That's kind of crazy because if you think about it, right, those are 22 like serializations that are in their lineup, right? So that's going to come out every week. And technically, there are only 2 remaining shows that I would argue is, like, from my knowledge of those like mangas, are worth having a really good anime adaptation. It would have been Sakamoto Days with the 3rd, but in like the coming days of us recording it, they announced, very pleasantly surprised, an anime adaptation.
Who do you think is going to adapt it, actually?
No clue.
Would it be things like TMS Entertainment, which is the studio that that was A1 for Mashal? It could be A1.
I don't think they did announce something.
Yeah, there hasn't been anything other than a release date.
No, there's a trailer.
Yeah, but I think it's just like a composite of like some clips and whatnot.
No. It was.
Was it not like an announcement trailer?
Hold on.
Oh, there is the official trailer.
Yeah. I saw it.
That came out just yesterday.
I watched it.
As of recording.
It looked quite nice. We're just gonna play it, muted. But
oh, actually, while you're at it, maybe scroll down, see in the credits if they actually have a studio that made the. It's all in Japanese. Sorry.
Oh shit. Okay. Sorry.
I'll get it. Don't worry about it. But yeah, okay. Sakamoto Days coming out. Woohoo! Weekly Shonen Jump managed to get another adaptation. That's all. That sounds fine. I mean, the fact that, like, at least with the current roster, right? One Piece, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, Yozakura Family, Undead Unluck, being Roboco, Sakamoto Days. If you also didn't include like Elusive Samurai, that's getting an adaptation as well. That seems like a decent track record. But I don't,
which it is.
but I don't think that also paints the full picture of Weekly Shonen Jump, right? Because we're only talking about the quote unquote success stories, some of which have been success stories for well over a decade. Some, like One Piece, was well over 2 decades.
So I think right now, probably the top 3, if there has to be a big 3, because all of us like that kind of moniker and that kind of title,
333, yeah,
is One Piece, Jujutsu Kaisen, and My Hero Academia right now.
In fact, like those are the only ones that have been running like well over 5 years. Jujutsu Kaisen came out in 2018. A lot of the other ones, unfortunately, yeah, they came out maybe 2019, 2020, stuff like that. But they're relatively young shows, and they only just got adaptations in the past year, right? Yosakura Family, Burn the Witch, doesn't even talk about that one because that was like almost like a one shot, and like nothing's really happened out of the anime adaptation since then. Unlock also like only released earlier this year.
2023, yeah.
Oh yeah, last year, yeah.
Oh, TMS Entertainment is doing Sakamoto Days.
Okay, I thought it was TMS.
Yeah,
I thought it would have been TMS.
So there's only 2 shows, honestly, Akane Banashi and Witch Watch, that I think realistically are shows that have mangas that have some history, some backlog, so there's enough to be adapted, as well as being, accepted by manga fans or, people yearning for an anime adaptation. Okay, so what is the big deal then? There's also anime airing right now with JJK and Undead Unluck and all the stuff that Will just said. So,
the reason why I thought TMS Entertainment for Sakamoto Days is because they also did Undead Unluck.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I thought maybe.
Which, to be fair, when we watched Undead Unluck, despite how we feel about the show, it looked good, right? But let me ask you this, guys, listeners, as a rhetorical question, because you can't actually talk to me right now. There is no shonen action left to adapt. Maybe in the new ones with 2023 and 2024. But you're going to have to give it several years in order for them to build up a catalog, several volumes, to drum up excitement and hype in order for them to even adapt it. And Witch Watch is not a shonen action. No. Akane Banashi is definitely, despite how I like it and love it, is not a shonen action. Sakamoto Days is, but actually now they can't use that argument anymore because it just got an anime adaptation. So what do you have left? That is the traditional definition of Shonen Jump. None. One Piece is going to end at some point. My Hero Academia is going to end at some point. And by some point, I would argue it's sooner than we would think. I would say JJK is not that far off, but will still be around before, the other 2 ends. And they're not going to axe it. And they're going to probably adapt all of it. So, but how are you going to fill that void? I think Will said something to me like off air, like casually, was like, how is One Piece, when it is over, how are you going to fill that void? And I think I said something like, you can't. Or you fill it with like 80 things.
Yeah. And to be fair, there were close to like 80 things that came out in the 2020s, right?
Oh,
all the stuff we've talked about so far.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so the stuff that has come out in this decade, right? That's still running. Unto Unluck, Me and Roboco, Sakamoto Days, Elusive Samurai, Witch Watch, Blue Box, Akane Banashi, Ruri Dragon, Kill Blue, Nue's Exorcist, Kagura Bachi, and then you have stuff like the Green Greens, Super Psychic Policeman, Chojo, Dear Anemone, Astro Royale, Psych House, as well as Kyokuto Necromance. Those are things that are still running, half of which have adaptations or are about to get adaptations. Then you have stuff that just either finished within 3 years, like Mashal. Mashal was done, right? Released 2020, finished 2023. But then you also have a lot of shit that just didn't make it past year 1 or year 2. So I'm going to list out all the shit that no longer runs on Shonen Jump despite it releasing this decade. Zip Man, A Gravity Boys, Mashle Magic and Muscles, Guardian of the Witch, Morty King, Bone Collection, Time Paradox Ghostwriter. That one was a controversial one.
Yeah, because of plagiarism. Yep.
Exactly. Ayakashi Triangle, Magu-chan God of Destruction, Heartbolt Cop and Dolphin. That one did get an adaptation, I think. Or maybe, I don't know. Burn the Witch, Phantom Seer, High School Family, Kokusei Kazuko, Our Blood Oath, Build King, which I actually did read. It sucked. I Tell C, Nine Dragons Ball Parade, Candy Flurry, The Hunters Guild. Red
I
Hook.
remember Candy Flurry.
You did?
Yeah, I quite liked it.
There's also Neru Wave the Martial Artist. P. That's 6 P's.
That's the piano one.
Oh, okay. Ayashimon, Protect Me, Shogumaru, Doron. That's really the name. Earthchild, Super Smartphone, Aliens Area, Tokyo Demon Bride Story, Ginka and Gyuna, the Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins, Cypher Academy. Very infamous, that one.
Translators.
Ichigoki's Under Control, Fabricant 100, Tenmaku Cinema, Do Retry, Martial Master Asumi, Icehead Gill.
Is it Moebana also? Did you say Moebana?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
Never
mind.
There's also Mama Yu Yu, Two on Ice, and Shadow Eliminators. All of those did not survive. Well, a lot of them did not survive past year one.
Since 2022.
Essentially, the majority of those released one volume, and then it was canned.
Yeah. And I also did some rough stats. Since 2022, 15 serializations came and went.
Yep.
Not got canceled, as in they arrived, premiered, and then got yeeted and deleted. That's insane.
Yeeted and deleted like that.
Sorry, yeah, it's a, I don't know. Trying to keep,
keep
cool, right?
Yeah, no, play on that. It's cool. But yeah, a lot of these will never see the day of light. You're not going to be seeing a whole lot of that shit because they just couldn't survive. One volume and that was it. And
look, we are not trying to undermine the really fucking crazy hard deadline and work and blood, sweat, and tears that mangakas and their assistants and their editors go through on a weekly basis. We're not trying to dismiss that. But if we're looking at it from, let's say, a consumer standpoint or a publisher standpoint, Will, are you really going to be interested in adapting a serialization that is like a volume from Shonen Jump? You're not going to.
Maybe a one shot, but then at that point, what's the point in it, right?
Maybe a movie.
Why would
sure.
Why would you do a one shot or even a movie? A movie makes sense if you want to make money, right?
Look back.
But if you do a one shot of and then you try and do a quick one episode recap of that one shot, you're not making any money from that because this it's a done series. It clearly wasn't popular enough to even be to continue serialization. So then why adapt an anime out of something that is been dead in the water for well over a year?
And usually these serializations, they don't get the grace to really end on the way that they want to, because serializations try to be serial, so they try to keep the train going at least up to a certain point, right? And when you only have maybe one volume or 3 volumes under your belt, imagine if the sole purpose, again going back to what anime is traditionally used for, to promote your manga, but the manga is dead.
Yeah, and not everybody has the luxury of being a Fist of the North Star or an Urusei Yatsura, where they've
or Case Closed, right?
They've been done. Well, yeah, they've been done well over 20, 30 years ago, but someone decided they wanted to revive it. That is a miracle. It's a dime a dozen. You're not going to be able to see see these kind of events happen, right? So if your series had come out and then 1 year later it's already been canned, yeeted and deleted, as Jason would say, you're not going to be seeing adaptations for that. And that's the worrying thing for Weekly Shonen Jump, because not only is there not a whole lot of stuff left to adapt, but not a whole lot of the catalog is Shonen Jump. It's not shonen.
Right.
Shonen
action, right? And I think the issue with Shonen Jump is that their identity now of what people associate with action-packed, the hero's journey, friendship conquers all, action scenes, right? Hype, blood pumping kind of gusto feeling, right? Sakuga moments, right? Those don't really exist. Even the really outstanding things like Akane Banashi, even the really outstanding things like I would even give you Witch Watch as like a rom-com cutesy kind of thing. That's not your Jujutsu Kaisen, your One Piece, your Naruto's.
I'll just roll a couple for you to judge
and
like,
smoke it, right?
No, like roll a couple here and like you see what Shonen Jump was all about. They did all the JoJos, right? They did Bleach. They had Aishou 21. They also had Death Note, Gintama, D Gray Man. Like, that was just like the early 2000s,
Right.
right? I mean, let's not forget about One Piece as well. Funny enough, I actually didn't realize that Ichigo 100% was Shonen Jump.
Wait, that ecchi fan service one?
Yeah, I didn't realize Strawberry 100 was actually...
I didn't know that either.
I didn't know either, but it serialized in 2002 on Weekly Shonen Jump.
I would argue of all of the weekly or monthly magazines that come out in Japan or, Simul Pub, right? You can almost like whack a stick at a random weeb and they will know Shonen Jump.
Yeah. And that's not to say that like Shonen Jump is purely shonen action. I mean, they had stuff like Toraru, they also had like Bakuman. So it's not like they only just do shonen action. But it's also kind of like hard to look past Shonen Jump without thinking about all the hardcore action adventure series they've had.
Yeah,
so
like, are we saying that Kyoto Animation cannot make, like a really dark and grim JJK?
Yeah.
No, of course they can. But it's just, we associate it with fluffy, cute girl slice of life stuff because that's just their identity.
Just really heartbreaking, depressing shit.
Yeah, like emotionally driven.
A lot of it is emotionally driven.
Rather than like your typical violence and like
bombastic eye candy.
Exactly. Yeah. When I think of Studio Trigger, I am not thinking of, sure, they can make normal, quote unquote, normal stuff, but I always associate it with crazy out there action like Little Witch Academia, with Kill la Kill, with Gurren Lagann. That's just their personality. And whether it's us imprinting it onto the studio or them being conscious of their identity, you cannot argue based on the lineup that Weekly Shonen Jump has right now that there is a lot of heavy, hard-pumping action that we always associate with Shonen Jump.
Do you think it's just like a changing of the times? I mean, don't forget, this is a magazine that had serialized Fist of the North Star, City Hunter, Saint Seiya. They also did, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and all that. Slam Dunk.
Yeah.
Right? These are all like tried and true, like well-known names within anime and manga. And now we're kind of, do you think maybe it's just like the taste in anime and manga has slightly changed? Do you think maybe like the viewing demographics of the people are now slightly moving over, so we're not like seeing as many young kids reading manga? Now it's more like teenagers / young adults or even older.
So I know what Will is trying to do here, so I'm going to pick up what he is lobbing to me. And Will managed to find some stats, which is based off of Anime News Network. They did some Shueisha like news articles. So they, in February 23rd, 2009, Anime News Network announced that in 2009, it was reported that, was it 62.9% of the magazine's readers were under the age of 14.
Yep.
So for those who are unaware, that demographic is straight bang in the middle of what is considered shonen in terms of its literal definition.
Yeah.
If it's slightly older, like young adult or early 20s, like 1920, that's the seinen. That's like more of your Tokyo Ghoul type of thing, right? Now, though, in 2019, Shueisha revealed that its largest demographic, so let's be clear, the largest demographic of 27.4% was aged 25 or older.
Which is insane. Because back then, it was like almost 2 in 3 readers was under 14. Now it's like kind of more spread even.
And your biggest is over 25.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's very likelihood that a sizable chunk is still in that shonen category, and I'm sure it is. But when you reveal that, and don't forget, the Japanese companies with their PR and their kind of narrative are extremely deliberate in what they reveal and don't reveal. So if they're revealing this piece of nugget of information, you have to kind of either read in between the lines or realize why they are revealing that. And I think partially is to kind of demonstrate that, as you said, changing of the guards, changing of the times.
The average anime and manga reader and viewer now is getting older.
Yeah.
That's not a surprise when you see stats like this.
Because we grew up with anime, and now we're older. We still love anime and manga. So, like, duh.
Which then brings into the question of what's happened to the youth. What
are the kids up to,
What's
Will?
wrong with the kids these days?
Oh, come sit down
but
let's...
do you think so? Do you think... I mean, okay, I don't know anybody under the age of 18 because that'd be really fucking weird. Unless they're like cousins or like nephews and whatnot. But like, I mean, do you think that it's just that kids are reading less and less? Regardless of it being manga, they're just not reading a whole lot. Do you think maybe it's also just the advent of like mobile gaming? So people are playing things like Roblox or playing fucking Minecraft and shit. So like, or even like the advent of like Twitch streaming. So there's more avenues of content for people to consume. Whereas back in 2009, it was like you had games, like whether it was a video game or a board game, you had comics and whatnot. Do you think it was just the fact that like our modes of entertainment have now been like drastically widened so that it's not just reading stuff anymore? You can also then just watch someone else play a video game. You can also, play other kinds of mobile games on your... Do you think that might have had an effect? That now more... Because, I mean, this is just general observation for me.
Right.
But seeing more and more kids out in Hong Kong, a lot of them have a phone or an iPad and they're playing something on their phones.
Right.
Rather than, like, reading a manga. Or reading something in general. I think maybe it's just the way that the general consumer of that age is now gravitating towards other kinds of entertainment rather than, something that's to be read.
Right.
Do you think that might have had an effect? Do you think maybe that's why, like, generally the shift towards, like, having older consumers of manga is not a surprise?
By the way, after this, if you want to take a break, or we can just keep going, but let me answer your question, because my personal belief is when you look at those stats that we just said, which was in 2009, almost 63%...
2 and 3, but almost, yeah.
...were at the age of 14 in terms of the demographic of Shonen Jump, for Shueisha at least. I mean, I don't know if it's Shonen Jump or just what Shueisha said.
Or just manga in general, right?
Yeah, and in Shueisha, at least for Shueisha, right? And in 2019, it was 27.4 being the largest demographic, and that was the age bracket of 25 or older. I think when you put it in the greater context of how massive anime, manga, light novels, and all that is now compared to back then, it makes sense that things are now more spread out, because the people who were 14 back then are now older. Also, the amount of people probably is way magnitudes larger than it was before. Then when you look even further ahead, maybe back then, as you said, with anime, right? There was only like 10 shows. If you didn't watch Evangelion or Naruto or Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, what I'm more thinking, though, is that...
But now there's 50-something shows per 3 months.
Yeah, so it makes sense that, like, of course, 10 years ago, when you were 14, then, of course, you're in that demographic. But then 10 years later, you then, a lot of them would then move into the next demographic. What I'm more sort of concerned about is, are we not getting more younger viewers in? Like, are we not getting more new, like, 14 and under manga readers? Or do you think that...
No, maybe the quantity is larger, but because the people that are older are still consuming, because we're 25 and older.
Yeah, they never actually said like how many people were part of those.
And that's
studies,
why it's
right?
like read in between the lines, right? Because it's like what they say and what they don't say. Because it's like cryptic, because you have to figure out like what is the point of them mentioning this.
Yeah, it could be like in the first survey they interviewed like 5,000 people, and in the second one they interviewed like 50,000 people.
Don't forget statistics. I mean, as someone who like does a lot of like clinical or academic research, you can really fuck up statistics without changing any numbers or doing any fraudulent thing to fit your narrative.
Yeah, there is no like completely neutral survey out there. There's always going to be some level of inherent bias in there.
Or the way that you gathered it was flawed. Or there's so many factors, right? So you're going to try your best. But if I really have to guess, it is not necessarily that the younger people, in terms of quantity back then versus now, has decreased.
Like, it's not just as simple as young kids are no longer interested anymore, right?
It's more like the several things happening in parallel, where nowadays there's so much of everything everywhere. There's also the ever-expanding community fan base of anime, manga, light novel readers. And how we used to be.
Yeah,
literally 14, and then now we're over 25.
To be fair, I mean, like, you'd look on, like, for example, like, r/anime, right? A lot of people that ask for anime recommendations, a lot of them only just started watching anime in the last year or so. And a lot of them were, like, well over, like, 20 and so. So it's definitely not so much like, oh, we're not getting any young fans. It's just that we're also getting a lot of new fans that happen to be older. Therefore, it helps to inflate that older demographic.
Yeah. So, and if we go even further back in our discussion about, is that okay then with Shonen Action and Weekly Shonen Jump not really being that kind of, that tight anymore of a connection? Yeah, that's fine. For me, at least. That's okay. The issue is, A, is everyone okay with that? Is Shueisha okay with that? And my educated guess is no.
Yeah. I think we can maybe expand a bit further on that after our break, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about,
and also
what the future holds.
And when we talk about the future, we're going to have to then go into the main Jump Plus, Manga Plus integration. So, yes.
So, we'll take a quick break. I know there was a lot of number crunching in there. So, everyone, take a quick 5-10 second break, and then we'll get back to you with the second half. We'll see you later.
See ya.
You are listening to the second half of today's episode of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. Jason and I have been crunching numbers and talking about the sad reality of what's happening with Weekly Shonen Jump, and now we're going to be going over the future, what the future possibly holds for the current manga landscape, specifically within Weekly Shonen Jump, or maybe into other platforms as well. So, we've gone on a bit of a, not really a diatribe, but we definitely were not like super hot and positive about like the current manga landscape.
I think soapbox / diatribe is a good summation of kind of what we're saying for sure.
But maybe the future, holds some golden nuggets of fortune. Maybe there's going to be, a changing tide coming in.
Because it ain't about the papers. It's about the 0 and 1s.
Yeah. So
it's all about digital, baby.
Yeah. We are now going to be talking a bit more about the wider manga landscape. Not just what's been printed on paper, but now what is being syndicated through you on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, whatever digital means you have of consuming manga. So, the main one that we have come to know now, especially since I didn't realize as well that Jump Plus had been around for a decade, but then you talked about the Manga Plus thing. Yeah, that makes sense. That's about around the time that you and I knew about the digital manga scene as well. So, Manga Plus,
Well, to be fair, I did know more. I did know that digital manga was a thing.
Yeah.
But we're not going to pay $8 to $12 on Bookwalker for every single volume that we want to read.
What we more talk about is like an actual, like, quote unquote streaming platform
or subscription or free with ads type deal. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say that between you and I, the one we use the most would be Jump Plus, Manga Plus.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, I have a deluxe plan, so yeah.
I mean, there's like the Square Enix one, there's K-Manga, there's a bunch of other ones too. What
Manga Up is the Square Enix one. That's
Azuki, is that the other one?
Yeah, I also have a subscription for Azuki. And Crunchyroll Manga doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
That got phased out.
That one died a long time ago.
Shit.
So,
right?
yeah. So, we didn't talk about like a lot of the big names, for example, like Chainsaw Man, that was originally on Weekly Shonen Jump, but then
I think
moving
Ruri Dragon is another one
Yeah.
that is getting some hype that actually I wanted to cover, but I just didn't have enough time. That was moved also from printed Weekly Shonen Jump to digital Jump Plus, Manga Plus.
Yeah. So we were talking a lot about like the decreasing sales of print media, how manga sales have been dropping because people just don't buy paperback anymore, or even like maybe they just don't buy digital ones because if the cost the same as an actual book, then might as well buy the book, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, of course, that digital manga is bad. In fact, if anything, this might be like the necessary change that the landscape needs because when more and more stuff goes online, when more and more stuff becomes digital, you need to also be able to maintain that relevance by moving your content over to those digital platforms. So that's why like Shonen Jump also has their own online store, right? So you go online, you can read a free chapter or two, and then afterwards you can buy that volume straight from their platform, or you get a subscription off of Manga Plus and continue reading there, right? I think it's not expensive at all, is it?
Yeah, it's like $2.99, $3.99 US dollars per month. I think for Hong Kong I pay 40. I mean, I can just check.
It's like half of Netflix.
It's like 48 Hong Kong dollars.
Yeah, so that's very affordable in terms of a media streaming / like subscription model. So I think that this is the necessary change that Shueisha needed to do. And I mean, you also see that with all the other big companies too, like Kadokawa, Kodansha, Square Enix and all that. They've also started releasing their own content through their own apps.
With varying level degrees of success and implementation, right? We talked about that.
And also popularity as well, because some of them are absolutely garbage. But, you can't deny that, if you have your own properties and you want to, monetize it yourself, you are going to create a platform for that. So no matter how bad it is, if you really wanted to read stuff that was done by Kodansha, read stuff that's done by Square Enix, you're going to be using those platforms, whether you like it or not.
So for context, at least for our Hong Kong listeners, which there's a good number of you, Manga Plus, Hong Kong dollar, $18 per month for their standard plan, but the deluxe plan, which is the one I have, is $38 Hong Kong per month, which is like a coffee.
It's cheaper than a 6-piece nuggets.
Yep. Like per month, and you have access to like thousands of chapters and a lot of titles and legacy titles and stuff.
And it's great too because chances are you probably have a smartphone, you probably have a laptop, you probably have a tablet, so you would be able to read your shit on whatever device you have. It's not like, oh, you need to have a iPhone or you need to have like a Snapdragon processor of this level and whatnot. No, as long as you have a stable internet connection, whether it be 5G or whether it be through Wi-Fi, you will be able to get those content.
And a lot of hype anime shows now. Yeah. Like either airing literally right now for spring 2024 with Kaiju number 8.
They'll have their manga on there.
Or Spy X Family, right? Those are actually, other than like maybe converting it to physical like later down the line, is actually online exclusive, like at least in terms of where it started, rather than being like a Chainsaw Man that like transitioned, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about that, clearly digital's the future. Obviously digital is the future. Look at Netflix when it used to have DVDs, and now it's not even a thing anymore. It's all about streaming, right?
What I'm more thinking about now, though, is at least within the realm of manga, is having a subscription service for digital manga profitable.
And that is the interesting question. And also, okay, then if digital's the way to go, what is the possible good and bad sides for either the consumer or the publishers or the mangakas, right? I would argue for us, at least 38 Hong Kong dollars per month to have access to pretty much everything.
Yeah, let's use $38 as opposed to 18 because like if you want like the most bang for your buck experience, we would say $38.
Yeah, or we quote unquote take it to like quote unquote the worst case scenario, right? Yeah. The most extreme, right? So let's just even round it up to 40 Hong Kong dollars. So it's like what? Divided by 7.7 or just divided by 8, it's like less than $5 US.
Yeah.
you're gonna need how many subscribers is like an insane amount.
Yeah,
right?
like if you take for example buying, buying like paperback or even buying a digital manga could be anywhere from $8 all the way up to maybe even $15.
Yep.
Right. Instead, you're allowing users, subscribers, to essentially read a whole catalog of manga for like a quarter of that per month.
Yeah.
So let's say you have 10,000 subscribers. You're still not making a whole lot of money off that.
And then on top of all that, you also have to think about the longevity of, well, similar with how Netflix is now going through that kind of dilemma with like, well, we're running out of stuff. Clearly, when you are that invested in the medium with manga in this case, up to a certain point, you will be like, well, I'm caught up with this one and that one, or I'm not interested in these other ones. Well, what am I going to do?
Yeah. I think, though, like one of the biggest like pros of having digital manga, especially on a streaming or a subscription platform, is the rate of localization.
Yeah.
The fact that before,
like simulpub,
exactly.
right?
Before, it would take forever for you to get. I mean, like sometimes if you just look at like a published volume, it could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months for the English version to come out.
And for context, I think Will and I are in a very unique situation because I can distinctly remember times when I would go to school in the U.S., go to a Borders, right, bookstore, and look at, like, I don't know, like a Bleach, for example, or Attack on Titan, and being like, oh, they're up to that volume. And then literally I go back home for the holidays, and it's like, wow, we are like 6 volumes ahead or whatever. And in Japan, it's like even further than that, right? Like, it is insane, the lag that was actually not that long ago, where that kind of lag is a normal thing. Nowadays, though, you have simulcast, simultaneous like anime being available, simulpub, and sometimes even simuldub, which is like crazy. Add on top of all that, it's not just English and Chinese in our context. And think like even in Jump Plus, Manga Plus, or at least I guess in Manga Plus, there's like French, Spanish, Portuguese. The list goes on and on of applicable translations.
Just to give like a single example, I'm gonna use my tried and true beloved Tokyo Ghoul. Okay, Tokyo Ghoul, the first volume came out in February 17th, 2012.
Okay, now also to be clear, it was Shonen Sunday.
It was on weekly Young Jump,
right? Which is Shueisha's seinen magazine, so it's not Weekly Shonen Jump.
Yeah.
But just in case people like crucify us for making that distinction. But I know you're using that as an example.
Yeah, as an example, right? So then 2 years later, that's when we first got the first season of Tokyo Ghoul. It was only in June 16th, 2015 that we had the first English release of the first volume.
So the anime...
Yeah, anime came out way before the English manga did.
Oh, no.
Right? Basically, it took like anywhere from 2 to 3 years for each volume to be translated into English.
And like that's tough because also you have to consider things like Tokyo Pop that is, I think, now defunct, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of other publishers that are trying to really make a living carving out this really niche thing at the time and making money off of it, or creating a brand identity or introducing people to anime and manga. It's like really tough.
Yeah. You know the last volume of Tokyo Ghoul Re came out only 4 years ago.
No.
Yeah. April 21, 2020 was when the last volume.
Like physical though.
Yes, physical.
But I'm guessing digital came out like
probably, yeah.
Like actual translated digital came out way before.
Yeah. Because like
it does take a while.
Yeah, like in terms of like compiled volume syndications and all that does take time. Because you have a bunch of other companies you need to deal with before you're able to get stuff on the street.
And listen, guys, I am not, an executive or like a CEO of a manga publishing place, right? I have no idea. But when I just observe from the outside, webtoons, for example, or tapas, and like their vertical scrolling format, And I go, yeah, okay, cool. That's awesome. Like manhwa and all that stuff, that's like their thing, right? Like solo leveling and all that stuff, like scroll. Awesome. That makes sense with the phone format. And then like I think like the recent like 2-3 years, there is actual, they call it V-scroll manga. I think,
Yep.
Will, you read one of them.
I did read one. I can't remember what it was called though.
But it's like someone going up a castle or building something.
I can look for it. I'm sure I'll be able to find
But
it.
I'm like, damn, like, okay, like, forget about panels now. Now you're trying to integrate or trying to catch the audience that is into webtoons. And it also goes both ways because there is a lot, and I mean now a lot of, I think, I really like the villainous subgenre. So there is like, was it Villainous Turn the Hourglass? I think Villainous Destined to Die or whatever, that is actually manhwa, Korean based, but then they adapt it to digital manga volume, almost like you would read a book.
Okay, so you know how you're saying V-scroll and vertical manga?
Yep.
The manga that I read was called The Vertical World.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
Oh damn. Talk about being on the nose, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so the thing is, going digital is inevitable. I get that. You get that. So why is this that big of a deal? I think it is the adoption rate. It is not us adopting that technology, but how long it took for us to even get here in the first place when it was readily available. I always remember like Nintendo being very reluctant to adopt, like, you know, like, I mean, even now they, in terms of streaming their games, they're very uptight about it. Or, you know, doing online play when Xbox and PlayStation, which obviously is Japanese in nature, but it's like being resistant to change is really very ingrained in, I guess, the Japanese mannerisms or the way that they conduct business. And I'm not necessarily being racist. It is just a characteristic that a lot of these business practices, because to be fair, safe, conservative practices are generally risk-free comparatively to something that is way more riskier, and then you will lose money. You know, tried and true, play it safe, right? So, but at that point, it might be too late.
Yeah, no, I agree in terms of like a lot of Asian business practices. It tends to be more like they tend to be more risk averse. They want to make sure that like things are solid.
And I'm like that too in nature too, right? So,
I mean, it doesn't hurt to be safe, right? Better safe than sorry. That's the tried and true business practice of Asia.
yeah. And also, to be fair, right? Like, I don't know, Will. It's kind of good that if you do... I remember when Kaiju number 8 was still in its infancy, and Manga plus Jump Plus was, like, just the thing that we found out. I think we made a point to be like, oh, it's kind of cool that, like, they're having a hiatus. And then they just have, like, an illustration. I think Spy X Family did that, too. It's like, chapter 4, but then... instead of releasing chapter 5, it's like, here's chapter 4.1, and it's just an illustration. And and then a lot of the comments being like, yo, I know how hard you're working. And I think the majority of them were like, we good. We'll wait. Like, don't die. Take care of yourself. And when the new chapter shows up, we will be here for it. And it's like the overwhelming majority of sentiment, right? And I think that's great. That traditional physical magazines of Weekly Shonen Jump cannot provide, because you have to do print deadlines. You literally have to, or else it's like you're fucked.
You gotta go. You gotta make your shit by this issue. If not, then you're not on here anymore.
It's like Shirobako. Like, I'm gonna speed into this TV broadcasting place because it's about to air. If we don't put that tape in that thing and air it, we're fucked.
Yeah. So there's a lot of benefits in terms of like moving stuff from print to digital. I mean, it was the natural evolution of the medium, but you now have more flexible timelines in that.
In theory.
I mean, I'm sure there's definitely like a contract that you need to produce this much in X amount of months, X amount of years and whatnot. But also, the localization rate, meaning that the manga that you wanted to read is now more readily available on a global scale.
Yep.
right? So that it gives it a more global audience. It allows for more people to be able to read manga, and so it's not just like, oh, of course, like Japan's going to get everything first, right? Because it's all made there.
I mean, unless if it's simulpub, right?
Yeah.
Or simulcast.
But that's the model that a lot of mangas are now moving towards too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's almost as close as it can get to being instantaneous.
So there's a lot of pros. It's just at the same time, you also need to think about the profitability and the sustainability of it as well. And like you mentioned, right? In order for it to be sustainable, you need more adoption. You need more people to move away from the print and just go into digital.
Yeah.
And also, it does mean that like we just need more people to read manga.
Yeah. Or you charge more per user, or have more users, or both, right?
I'll say this. If I was as invested in manga as I was in anime, right? And you were to tell me that subscription for Jump Plus, Manga Plus is around the same ballpark as a Crunchyroll or a Netflix subscription, I'd still pay it.
Right.
I would easily, I mean, like, of course, I would love to just only pay $38 a month, right? Hong Kong dollars. But if you were to tell me that it goes anywhere from like 38 to 68, 78, something in line with like a video subscription.
It's like Steam, right? Like Steam Marketplace and Steam, like for video games, right? It's like, I'll pay extra just so of the convenience and to have it all integrated and easily available.
Yeah.
Readily available. But the issue, I guess, is when I go on Jump Plus, Manga Plus, for example, or any other, you know, we looked at K-Manga, we looked at like Manga Up. I had like a huge problem with how they monetize.
Is Manga Up the Square Enix one?
Correct. Yeah, that one's the one that was the most egregious
with
one.
Like points and credits and shit like
and
that, right?
ads in mid chapters, bro.
Yeah.
And then having them split into 4 per chapter.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Like, I just got mad. I tipped over something. But okay. Excluding all that, the issue that I have. Okay, let me try to figure this out first. Shit. I lost my train of thought.
No, but I honestly think as well, like when you have this more like readily available, widespread platform, it does also give pressure to creators that they need to make something good. No longer before it was like you need to get your shit together or else like we're just not serializing your shit in print. Now it's more like, yo, anybody can get their shit on our platform if you're good enough, but you also need to keep up and make it a banger because we can easily just cut your subscriptions.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Things like, do you remember there was like a Jump Plus, Manga Plus like contest? Oh, you submit your one shot and you'll get a serialization.
Yeah.
And you can literally be anywhere in the world and do that. That is awesome. But at the same time, just as the easily can be given to you, as you said, it can be easily taken away. Whereas I would argue when it was more the tried and true traditional print with the editors and you might have that long feedback and routine, it's kind of hard or a very big deal when they axe your serialization. And I would argue, again, just because Will said Tokyo Ghoul, it just reminded me of Soyoshida. Trojan X is, I would argue, an extremely mid, at least performance-wise, a very mid-series.
You can't help but compare it to Tokyo Ghoul.
But are you telling me that their editors or whatever will be ruthless and axe Soyoshida's Trojan X? Or even Hunter x Hunter, right? How many times has he been in and out of retirement? Does he need to? No, but, like, you're going to say yes because it's him. It's the legacy. And at the end of the day, it's really difficult to shake, One Piece from the throne. But One Piece is going to peace out someday.
It's tough. I mean, like, the competition could not be higher because, honestly, like, in order for you to be able to... It's the algorithm, essentially, right? It exists with Netflix. That's why Netflix has the top 10 of your region.
I mean, it really pisses me off that, like, nowadays we get emails that, like, don't forget to miss out on these shows after the end of the month. They're going to leave the Netflix service. I'm like, bro, you turned it and spinned it into a thing of its own. Like, A, props to you, but B, also fuck you.
Yeah.
Right?
There was a series, actually, on Well, originally it was on Shonen Jump, but then they also started producing stuff
Golden
digitally.
Kamuy was on Netflix, I think, at one point.
Yes.
And then the live action one is on there.
Yeah.
But I can't watch it. I had to watch it like on like Crunchyroll and shit.
The one I wanted to actually talk about. This is it's still on like
Mhm.
it was on like it's published in English through Viz Media, and then it's digitally also on Manga Plus as well. Gravity Boys.
Right.
So this came out at the beginning of 2020.
I think it has like 3 volumes.
7 volumes.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 volumes. But it was also like the winner. It was nominated for a Next Manga Award. It was placed 6 out of 50 nominees. A lot of votes for it. It ranked 25th on like the Book of the Year list by Da Vinci Magazine. So there was a fair amount of acclaim for it. Right? Canceled. Just dropped out of nowhere. Like legitimately, like the last couple of volumes, the last couple of chapters for the last volume doesn't even indicate of whether it is like finishing up. I think it just got axed immediately. So like it ran for from 2020 through to 2022, and this was supposed to be a series that people were like getting hyped on because of the awards it was getting nominated for. Even
It
that
had momentum, right?
but then if you look at its Mel stats, 6.81.
That's pretty bad.
Or even lower than that, actually. It's 6.62, actually.
Shit.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, right? There is a lot more properties that are exclusive on Jump Plus, Manga Plus that Will and I have talked about more than several times. Things like, was it Even If You Slit My Mouth, right?
Yeah.
You and I Are Polar Opposites, which is another romance that romantic comedy that I really enjoy. I think there's one like there's so many, right? I think there's like a plant one called like strawberry green or something like that I randomly read and was like, this is kind of crazy, but in a good way. These are like opportunities that maybe creators couldn't have access to because they have to literally camp outside the like Suecia building, know the editors by their faces, and like put their business card and like really like hustle for it. And nowadays it makes it easier, but also makes it easier to be like, oh, I'll just read another thing, I'll just watch another show, because there's so many to choose from. There's so much. And honestly, if we go back to the original Redux of episode 2 of the GAP, of the big 3, there's no such thing anymore. You could argue, again, it's One Piece, My Hero Academia, and JJK. But honestly, using that kind of moniker is irrelevant anymore, because you just can't do that anymore. It's so difficult because, A, we're probably not going to get that kind of longevity. And even if we look at the trajectory of the lineup now, things like Akane Banashi and Witch Watch, those are not your typical traditional shonen action shows. Does that mean that Weekly Shonen Jump is doomed? If you consider their identity of shonen action, then yeah, it is doomed. But it's like different now. It's like changing of the guards, as he's changing of the tides, the tonal shift, literally tonal shift. And I think like that's cool, but is that what audience want? I don't know, because I don't know. Well, every now and again we get reminded of JJK, Demon Slayer, all these shows that I think you and I both adore, or like we will watch it eventually when we get around to it. But that's gonna run out too.
What I've also noticed as well, this came into like when we were doing like our retrospective episodes and we were talking about like the different series that are getting adaptations and whatnot. What I noticed was that there was also a growing trend of getting more light novel adaptations.
I mean, that's always been occurred with the isekai genre, right?
So there's more and more now that are either getting adapted from like a book, a novel, or a light novel.
Because the well is running dry.
That might be the case. Where now it's like, dude, there's not a whole lot of good manga that is out there anymore. I mean, there's definitely a lot of choice, but not a lot that might last more than a year. So why bother doing that? Then there's a fuck ton of manga, a fuck ton of light novels that haven't been adapted yet, and they've been running for 15 years. Why don't we adapt those?
Because it's easy. Yeah, I get it, right?
Yeah.
But it sucks because on one hand, I don't really care about the next shonen action, especially given like my taste in general.
That's the thing too. It's like you and I are. I mean, we're getting older, and we can still appreciate a good shonen action. Hence, why it's like I'm still down to watch some JJK. I'm still down to watch some Demon Slayer. And
Will
whatnot.
and I were in the fucking theater watching Haikyuu,
Yeah,
which is technically shonen sports action. We love it. But like, and maybe there will always be that part of us that will always give, let's say, an isekai a chance, maybe here and there, or a shonen action generic series a chance, because that's just kind of like the foundation of anime and manga light novels nowadays.
like I just looked, right? So for spring 2024, at least as of recording, this is the current season we're in. There are 17 adaptations that are from light novels. That's a pretty big number.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like what, like 48, 50, maybe 50 series that came out. Maybe, yeah. So I think we're starting to see like more, like apparently, like more apparent that the shift from doing manga adaptations into anime is slowly like ceding its throne to light novels, simply because the well has run dry. Well, and again, we only focused on Shueisha stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're not even talking about Kodansha, Shikokugan, Kadokawa, any of those.
I mean, Will and I looked into it, but it almost is the same thing, but in different variations. But to go back to what Will said about like light novels, right? And again, I am not trying to undermine it, and I am very much distilling and condensing a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into very broad statements, but it's kind of easier to type out a novel and maybe have a couple of illustrations versus drawing, inking, coloring, shading manga panels, right? Like, just the craftsmanship in terms of an artistic perspective. Of course, you can be artistic with your words and your speech. I'm of course I'm in agreement, but it is also really difficult when you are a mangaka that has to not only write well, but draw well, or at least captivating enough to be able to have like a good and distinct art style or choreograph action scenes well. It's like all these things have to be from, at least traditionally speaking, one or two dudes, and then add in another couple of assistants. And by dudes, I also mean like, you know, Clamp is like stuff like.
I just had a quick look for summer. About 30% of stuff that's coming out for the next season is adapted from a light novel. That's pretty big. We're starting to see that number grow larger and larger per season. And to be fair, one of the adaptations is technically an ONA, which is the often monster season for a Monogatari series. It's coming out.
Oh yeah, because that technically is an ONA. Yeah, that's kind of funny.
It's coming out July 6th.
Yep.
It's getting closer and closer, dude.
Yep. I think we are at this point kind of beating a dead horse, and we are talking in circles with a narrative that is pretty commonplace, or at least very easily deduced, right? But Will, how are we doing on time?
We're completely fine on time. Actually, we're only like about an hour and a half in.
All right,
which is fine. I think.
I mean, we'll spitball for a little bit more.
But like just going off on like what we were talking about in terms of the whole adaptation process and how hard it is to get like a good manga off the ground and whatnot. That is still very much a problem. It's still very much a reality that we have. Yes, we are getting like 45, 50 anime series every season. But how many of those are sequels? How many of those are originals? How many of those are actual like adaptations of manga series that are currently syndicating? Or how many of these are just like remakes or done like series that had come out like 5-10 years ago? We can't keep on like just basically running into the wall of adapting things that have come out for so long and just ignoring the current slates of anime and manga. We need to get to a point where it becomes a very healthy cycle where you do have more new series coming in that get enough support and that then get enough eyes on it to be able to get greenlit for an adaptation. Now, that doesn't mean that like we should give all manga an adaptation. Far from it. That means we'll just be inundated with a lot of crap, right? But what I'm also thinking now is it because of the fact that we have like 200 like 200 to 250 manga series, anime series that come out per year. And that also then means that mangakas and publishing studios are under more pressure to continue making content to be able to meet those numbers. And therefore, more likely than not, they're going to be producing some pretty mediocre shit.
A, you're right. But B, I am going to mention two words, and that is very likely going to shift the tide and the orientation of mangas. Cyberpunk Momotaro. Remember that?
We haven't seen much more of, AI generated manga, but that is a
capability,
a very real
though.
possibility.
Like, taking the legality, like the ethics of that aside, right? When we look at what Cyberpunk Momotaro is and what the technology can do, so you're telling me that now, in theory, if I perfect it a bit or I get someone to brush it up, I can have an artistic style that I don't really have to do much, or I just have to brush up here and there, that like all I have to do is just write well. Sure, you could argue that like, okay, use ChatGPT to like write a better script or whatever. Like that's like a whole other can of worms, and I don't think current technology can achieve that level of ingenuity, creativity, and innovation. But if it can do the drawing part of manga, which I would argue is like 80% of it,
yeah,
and you can do it because Cyberpunk Momotaro looks quite fantastic, minus like like the weird hand thing that we noticed, or like how one of them looked like Morgan Freeman, right?
Something AI is still not very good at drawing hands for some reason. Yeah,
if you're telling me that I can spit that out and I just touch it up or write and that's it, imagine what a lot of people can do.
We're going to run into that uncanny valley soon, though.
I mean, we've been saying that for ages, right?
Where you have manga publishing companies using artificial intelligence to make manga.
And that's not fiction. They literally, we've talked about this.
And then you have anime studios that are using AI to animate AI manga.
And then translators don't exist anymore.
Well, because translators are now language bots.
Yep.
Right? So then what happens next? Legitimately, is everything just going to be done at a push of a button where you push? Manga's produced. Okay, send that shit out onto Manga Plus. Get some sales. Cool. Then we contact AI anime studio, and they're going to adapt this manga. And then afterwards, you press a button, and then immediately it launches the Crunchyroll. It launches the High Dive, Amazon Prime, whatever. Is that essentially the new supply chain? Do you think that might even be a possibility? Not on a not on a large scale.
Are you saying it might be a possibility? I would say it 100% might be a possibility. Yeah. Will it be that possibility? I cannot say for sure, and I also don't want it to be that way.
Because at that point, it just feels like a very sanitized environment. Like you just know that at some point, every 3 months, all you have to do is press a button, and then you get 50 new manga series, and then press another button, you get those adapted, and then press another button, they're immediately at your doorstep.
However, though, one thing I will say is, if we look at the landscape of Weekly Shonen Jump, you could, in theory, again, speculation is, if you need to find the golden goose, you need to find like your unicorn, AI could technically do that.
Yeah.
Or you, just like how Netflix just throws money at the wall and see what properties or what, ideas stuck, just grab, like, I don't know, Nishio, and then prompt a bunch of
Are you gonna
panels?
Are you gonna feed a language bot, like essentially like a language model, to read all of Nishio's work, and then from that they're going to be generating their own Monogatari series?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, because
it's entirely possible.
It is possible, but I would argue more on something that I can like confidently say, which is more of like the artistic part of a manga.
Yeah.
Because that, even with Cyberpunk Momotaro, is I mean, it's not even like very possible. It is possible because it is already done. Whether it's done well or not, that's a whole different argument. But it is technically done, meaning that if I don't know, I was like that prompt or I had that AI technology in my hands, I could have produced something, even though I'm like the worst fucking artist known to humankind, probably.
Yeah, but then like, I think like the next barrier that you have then is adoption in terms of like how many people are actually going to be okay reading a manga that you know full well is done completely in AI. Right? It's the same thing that you can do with like video games. It's the same thing you can do with a animated short or like a TV show and whatnot. And if it's all just AI produced, do we then sort of like sully the value of actual like entertainment, where it's like, is it literally just pure consumerism that we just want to watch something and we don't really care how it's made?
I mean,
are we going to be turning it into fast food essentially?
I mean, that is like a really big and complex question. However, what I will say is, even though human beings, maybe with the assistance of certain programs or AI, obviously, or drawn in 3D, recycle isekais and it being viable, or recycling slice of life, but the topic of interest or the edutainment is different.
Yeah, and I did.
Are you telling me?
I have said before as well that like we have like watched some stuff that came out in like 2009, 2012, 2014, and they pretty much look like what you would see as anime in 2024.
Do you remember one of our earliest BPs? I think BP4, where we talked about what is considered generic and if that's okay or not, or what is unique, right? Even I would argue JJK is not necessarily super unique in terms of the plot. You could argue
you got the Qeeo, you got one of them being a female, you got supernatural powers, you got power scaling, leveling, and all that. You got the monsters of the week, you got big bads. You have an adventure where like they need to procure something in order to take out big bad or ascend to the throne of some sorts. It's the Naruto, it's the Bleach.
How many shonen actions, good or not, anime or just manga, have the power of friendship, the hero's journey? All these tropes are called tropes for a reason.
Yeah.
That's generic, right? So it's not necessarily, it's at a certain point it's all fast food because it's so hard to find, or I would say it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that Shonen Weekly Jump is not the same as it will ever be the way that we remember it. I don't know if that's okay or not, and maybe they'll go back to their roots once they find their footing in this weird limbo situation. But I have to say, it looks really bad, not only from their physical magazine, their revenue, but even with the success of Jump Plus, Manga Plus, does not guarantee that they are actually earning money.
Well, that, and also I think it's because it's really hard to gauge the direction that Shonen Jump should go into now. As you mentioned, right, the latest adaptations they have outside of Sakamoto Days, they're not deemed to be like shonen action. And so it's like you definitely have seen like the changing of the guard in terms of older viewers and readers of anime and manga. Therefore, tastes are also going to shift. That's why we have things that are a bit more grounded in reality and slice of lives, or you have people that are more looking at fantastical things and isekais and reincarnation shows and whatnot. So it could just be the fact that now people are getting a little tired of watching, your Demon Slayers, your JJKs and whatnot, and want to see other forms of. I mean, we've talked about the whole, decade defining genres and how each decade had like a different focus, where you used to have like the super mysterious adventures of like the 90s, right, with the bebops and the champloos and whatnot, and then now you have your isekais and actions and whatnot. It could be like in 5-6 years time things are going to be very different again.
I mean, to be fair,
we had our cyberpunk era in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and to be fair, when we had that BP of decade-defining genres, I said josei, music.
I mean, yeah,
and LGBT like special interests.
We have fucking we have the jellyfish can't swim at night.
Yeah.
We also have
Girls Band Crying.
Yeah, yeah. And then what was that vampire one? The vamp singing one. Vamps not
cruelty. Shit. The boy band one. it was like the hypnosis
Visual prison,
like the hypnosis mic,
yeah,
but with like femboy.
Yeah,
like
so
like,
those things are coming up. Like, yeah, you're gonna see a lot in terms of like the Josei, right? Sound of Affection, the one that came out this season as well. The Yuri one.
Oh, Whisper Me a Love
Yeah.
Song. Yeah, and there's plenty of, I would argue, at least for me, because I read a lot of girl love stuff, good mangas out there. But I think shonen action is kind of like, at least I can like, I think the Deus Ex Machina thing, the infamous line of, it's not the end of the world, but I can see it from here.
It's not like Shonen Jump, like Shonen action is not dead. Far from it.
And it probably will never be dead. And the stuff that we're saying now, technically One Piece has not ended, even though we know it will. My Hero Academia has not ended, even though we know it will. JJK, Demon Slayer has ended its manga run, but they're still making anime for it.
I mean, shit, the last volume of Demon Slayer came out 2021, right?
Something like that, yeah. And it's still selling like fucking hotcakes. So it's like, they still have a good amount of time before all that is like, exhausted.
2020.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's actually been 4 years since Demon Slayer
Jesus
actually
Christ,
finished.
I forgot all that. Damn. But yeah, all of that is like, we still have time, right? It's not the end of the world, but I can see it from here. I can see like 2-3 years later, if you don't start now to grow whatever next IP for shonen action, you're gonna not be able to have the next unicorn, the next One Piece down the line, or the next JJK, I would argue, because JJK would probably be more in line with not being crazy anomaly like One Piece, right? And I think that's okay, but I also think that's a shame. Just like how isekais now is a dime a dozen, but I also think there's a lot of decent like premises of isekais and a lot of good, maybe even middle of the pack isekais that I just like consuming, or like this one does it a little differently and it's okay. But at the end of the day, Weekly Shonen Jump is in a bit of a pickle. And unfortunately, the only way I can see it resolving itself is stripping the identity of the thing that it's well known for, probably since its inception, as far back as I can remember.
Man, I mean, this is obviously not a solution you're posing to Shueisha, right? But to essentially,
yeah, it's very easy for me to say that, right?
To
when I'm not them.
like just strip and redo their image, redo the very thing that made Weekly Shonen Jump what Weekly Shonen Jump is, and actually like sort of pivoting their direction instead of making just pure shonen actions. Now like branch out to, I mean, because they have done that still. They still make things are not shonen action. It's just that now
they're not like the front line, front and center,
and but it's also become very clear that a lot of the shonen action stuff from Shueisha, or at least from Weekly Shonen Jump, not hitting right now. A lot of cancellations, a lot of things that just, even if they get adapted, just don't go beyond the season. So,
like Mashal, right?
Yeah,
that's gonna be fine because of A1 and their adaptation and the hype.
But also, it only had a 3-year run, so therefore, there's not a whole lot of shit. So it'll be done by like season 3 or season 4.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. Now I remember exactly what I wanted to say like ages ago back. Will, serialization versus limited series.
Yeah.
We talked about like Orb. We always like going back to it these days. But Orb is a limited run of 8 volumes, right? Or 4 2-in-1 omnibuses for English translations. You know there's a definite beginning, middle, and end with the pacing and everything. When it's a serialization, your objective to a certain degree is to drag it out as far and as long as you can so that A, you can make a living, or you can make the 1000th episode, or you can have more action scenes, so on and so forth, right? To get people hooked. But at a certain point, just like a lot of US TV shows tend to cancel shows rather than end the shows.
Yeah.
Because that's like...
there's so many shows that I've watched that it's like, how the fuck did they think that canceling this was the right idea? But it's a cutthroat business.
Yeah, or you're like, oh, bro, it's on their 5th season, but like season 3 and 4 and now 5 is so utter trash. They should have just ended it at season 2 and just called it a day because it just ruined the whole IP for me.
Yeah.
Or for everyone, so to speak, right? I just think we can't associate Weekly Shonen Jump with Shonen Action like in like 5 years anymore.
But then that also poses the question of if they were to pivot to other genres, right? It's still somewhat of a shonen focus, right? But maybe they go a bit more in like the romance, they go a bit more in the mystery or the drama, whatnot. The question still remains, though, is would they still have a similar kind of longevity as like a My Hero Academia, like a Demon Slayer, where they run for several years? Because we've seen, right? It was like 22 manga series that were on the slate, and like a majority of them have been cut within a year. I think the main issue there is essentially, even if they were to switch to a different genre or they have a more broader focus in terms of producing multi-genre productions, are they going to be any good? Or are they going to be popular enough to be able to live past 2 volumes?
Now, this is the part where, even though we're so late into the recording, this was something that I didn't want to really...
We still have plenty of time. It's only an hour and a half right now.
But this is the part... Okay, that's good to know. So then I'm going to go in on this. This is the part where, in my opinion, and I think you will agree in terms of life in general, is very rarely for any person, any given situation, that you will always succeed the first time.
Yeah.
And always even, quote-unquote, succeed with flying colors. Usually, you need to fail and learn in order to get better next time, right? You know, the Batman saying, or I think Alfred said in Batman, what's the point of falling down to learn to get back up again? When you axe a serialization, it sucks. It does. Because it means your blood, sweat, and tears is like cut off. But maybe you learn from it such that through your mistakes, you then make a better product, and then that gets serialized. Like, how many proposals do you think an aspiring mangaka gets rejected before they get that one that pulls through? And I think, personally, that it is so, like, you got to give chances to fail in order to learn. But because we don't, because it's so cutthroat, and because you have to be good day one, people won't get good, or you're just waiting for the exception to the rule. And that's, by definition, like, rare. But that doesn't mean that all the other stuff or all the other people's submissions are bad. Do you know?
No, I get it. I think in the end, though, I think with the way that manga has been serialized and canceled on Shonen Jump recently, that the odds are stacked even higher than before. Like,
and that's the issue. They don't give it time to breathe. That's the fucking issue.
Like, I'm not even going to consider, like, things that, like, only came out this year, so therefore, like, they of course are going to be around for a while. Like, stuff that came out, like, legitimately, like, for example, like, Psych House and Astro Royale. These ones aired, like, serialized this year, so it'd be really crazy if, as of recording, they suddenly just got canceled. But I calculated there was around, like...
You mean publishing?
Yeah, I was like calculating there was around like 59, 60 series that came out in this decade. 75% of them have been canceled already or have been done. So essentially, like, in order for you to have like a long running series, and by long running I mean something that's longer than like 3 years, right?
Yeah,
it's like a 1 in 4 chance. Meaning that, like, a lot of these shows, a lot of these manga series are pretty much dead on arrival. It's actually insane to see that, like, there have been 10 series that came out. No, yeah, 1, 2, 3, like 12 series that came out last year. Only 4 of them are still running.
Right.
The year before that, some of them legitimately aired. I mean, like, published 2022, canceled 2022.
Right.
Is that not just demoralizing for a mangaka, do you think? Like, will you just see it's like, I might get a volume, I might get 2, but I know that at some point that to get a third, I gotta, like, actually pull my socks up and really work. Otherwise, this shit's gonna be off the air. Like it's gonna be off serialization,
and therefore off the air because I won't get an anime adaptation, right?
Yeah.
Also,
that's not to say that all mangakas do manga so they can get anime adaptations, right?
but it certainly helps. I'll give you that.
Definitely helps.
And also, the other flip side of a more free and a more varied type of market in terms of competition is of like, for example, when we like do our ASAP choices or when we read a manga, every once in a while we will be like, oh, it used to be a web manga or like on Pixiv or something.
Yeah.
Or like obviously probably one of the most well-known and mysterious ones is One, who did One Punch Man. And then look at how One has progressed in terms of Mob Psycho, in terms of One Punch Man, right?
I mean, season 3 is coming out, so...
Yeah, regardless of how we feel about it, right? You can start in those kinds of humble beginnings, or you can go the traditional route of like Naruto, JJK, My Hero Academia, of going to a publisher, or then even going to a publisher but doing it digitally with Kaiju Number 8 and Spy X Family.
You could also learn how to do it by watching Bakuman.
Exactly. But we haven't... Will and I have not finished the third season
We should get
yet,
around to watching season
and
3.
I don't even remember most of the stuff that has happened.
There was a really dumb hospital scene, which I still cannot forgive.
I forgot, but I remember us being really angry because it was like, maybe we don't want to spoil it, but it was about someone's reluctance to rest, I think, right?
Yeah. And that it turns out that no, they're not hardworking. They're just a fucking brat. That hurt a bit too much.
Yeah, that was infuriating, right?
But I feel like those are also like kind of like social pressures that these mangakas go through when trying to serialize stuff. Because again, like if you don't put in the work, it's really hard for you to stay on top of your game, and then you just fade to obscurity.
I mean, just look at us podcasting. And look at us talking about episode 2 and then now remixing it now. And then if we listen back to episode 2 and listen to us now, how much we have changed.
Yeah.
And how much we changed the way that we do things or how we have established a structure. Or how many people would love to do a podcast but either don't have the guts or are scared, which is very normal to put themselves out there. It's really scary. Imagine all the hateful comments. I mean, Oshinoko has a very infamous like arc and scene such that the victim's mom had to publicly be like, bro,
cut
the
shit,
fuck you doing, man? All right? Or Terrace House being like, guys,
that's not cool.
That's not cool. Or like, Kokoro Connect with like the prank of something that was really fucking mean.
Yeah. But those are like, big examples. It's not like a normal thing that ever occurs within like anime and manga.
But I would argue there's still examples nonetheless.
Yeah.
Because we can always say, oh yeah, there's always going to be like an Oda. There's always going to be one. I'm like, yeah, those are exceptions to the rule. But they're also good examples of those exceptions.
Yeah. I mean, you also brought up like a video game comparison of like the Dead Space remake and how it was like very much beloved. I mean, I saw it. It looks fucking amazing.
I think it's great.
Loads of people love it, except for the publisher EA, because apparently it didn't, meet sales expectations.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, fair enough. They're a business. They're here to make money, but also, fuck you. Come on, man. It's also EA. Everyone hates EA.
Yeah, and it's very easy for us behind two microphones, not even affiliated with, in this case, video game design or video game programming, for us to armchair critic it and being like, yeah, we should have done that. But if it was your money on the line, if it was your serialization waiting to be axed, or you trying to think of a good premise, you might be more inclined to be sympathetic or, be like, yeah, I kind of get it, right? Like, I don't necessarily like Soyoshida, but if he wants to do Trojan X and he can continue doing Trojan X, or Hunter x Hunter comes out of retirement for the 5th time, sure. Like, I probably wouldn't do that, but I'm not in your position.
Damn, apparently, and these are all like claims and rumors and whatnot, but apparently because of the lackluster sales for the Dead Space remake, that the plans for Dead Space 2 remake...
Oh, yeah, it's gone.
Shelved.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a rumor, but I was ready for... I knew that was happening right away.
So, again, this is not like just like a manga anime thing, right? A lot of different industries within entertainment also have the same backlog of issues in that when money's involved, money talks. And unfortunately, that's what rules the fucking world.
Yeah, and when the economy is going through such shitter, especially in Japan, of all things, right? And then you take into, like, remember, like, okay, this is not, like, something that we report on because we don't really do news anymore, but Will and I looked at, like, a Reddit post about, I think, a Studio Shaft Twitter post about this guy, and it's deleted now, but you can see the original Reddit post, and it's just really heartbreaking about this. I think it's a guy.
This well-known animator.
I think it's a guy, and I you can Google it or go on Reddit to see. But this person went through a lot of shit, and just reading the text, I was just like, man, I want to give this guy a hug. But at the same time,
if you give him a hug, he might have a panic attack. That's how rattled he's been in terms of his work. He was fucked up. Yeah.
But at the same time, Will, I cannot deny my selfishness in being like, but where's my next Monogatari? The fuck are you doing, man?
Well, it's coming out in a month.
Yeah. But, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, that's, like, the weird balance that people need to make. Because at the end of the day...
We all advocate for better working conditions, but we also want more anime.
Yeah.
So what happens, right? Is it the chicken first or the egg first? Which one are you going to do?
And it's very easy for us to talk about it rather than us executing it or thinking about the logistics and the planning and the money and everything, right? Like, it's really fucked up. And Shueisha and Weekly Shonen Jump and the Big Three are monikers of the past. Okay, not Weekly Shonen Jump and Shueisha, because they're very much alive. But Shonen Action as what Weekly Shonen Jump is, or the Big Three having to always have 3 Shonen Action that defines your lineup of Weekly Shonen Jump that will have the craziest, hypest anime production.
I mean,
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I might want to round off this discussion on that very thing you brought up, which is the state of the Big Three. Right?
Yeah, let's go.
So as of now,
yeah,
right? As of now, if we're not including Demon Slayer because that's technically done, but we can throw it in there as like a quasi Big Three because it's still a fucking
like
massive.
Honorable mention on the side. Yeah,
so you have like Jujutsu Kaisen, My Hero Academia, and One Piece.
Yeah, I would argue that would be the modern Big Three at the moment
because they're still running both in anime and manga,
and all 3 extremely successful.
But all 3 are like, maybe with the exception of Jujutsu Kaisen, but the other 2 are on the verge of completion. Right.
Yeah.
So what happens now? What's the next? Is there going to be a new Big Three? Is this just essentially like this moniker that is going to fall by the wayside?
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Absolutely.
It's really hard to see something right now. Like, okay, maybe there's Hell's Paradise, right?
It's done.
So yeah, is in the manga is completed as well? Yeah. Then no.
It has like 13 volumes. It's done.
Can't do that then, right?
I mean, they've yet to adapt like season 2, 3, 4, whatever, right?
But that's also the problem that Shueisha had made for itself. They just did not give ground to other series to flourish and allow for possibilities beyond just the Big Three, right? Like, you can, if your business model is always focused on 3 massive properties, all it takes is for them to say, you know what, like, I'm like 70 years old. I don't want to continue animating or continue writing this manga anymore. Shit, dude, like, your biggest cash cow's gone.
Like, of the Big Three that we propose, right? Personally, I would eliminate One Piece. Because it is that ancient, that successful, that long running.
It's its own thing.
That it's its own thing. Furthermore,
it's outlived Naruto, Bleach, and it's also going to probably outlive Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero Academia.
Very likely. Or, like, I can at least envision that, right? So, if we take Demon Slayer into that, like, 3rd slot now, so to speak, right? You have nowhere else to go. You literally have nowhere else to go. In terms of the traditional identity of Shonen Big Three. In my opinion,
I mean,
either you don't call it the Big Three, or the Big Three becomes the Big Three of Slice of Life with Witch Watch, Blue Box, and Akane Banashi.
To be fair,
in fact, I just like off the dome, that's a pretty dope trio.
But if you wanted to at least go by still the Shonen Action, you'd be left with Sakamoto Days, Undead Unluck, and maybe Elusive Samurai.
Which, to be fair, all those 3 properties are very successful, and excluding Undead Unluck, I quite like Sakamoto Days and Elusive Samurai, but they don't hold a candle to JJK My Hero Academia.
So maybe that identity switch would be helpful. Like what you mentioned, like Akane Banashi, Witch Watch, and Blue Box, or
those are my 3-0.
That could work.
That I don't think that not only could work, that is their 3-0. That's like in terms of having 3 properties that are hyped enough.
Plus, these manga series have run for more than 2 years.
Yep.
Hopefully, a few more years.
And look, I don't know what is installed for, the next JJK, whoever is creating that, however long in the future. If I knew that, trust me, I would grab a time machine and I'll fucking invest money in it, just like how I could have invested money into Bitcoin or some bullshit like that.
But do you think
with money?
Do you think with the state of the business as well as like consumer behavior as well that we're probably not going to be seeing as many long-running series? I mean, like you take away One Piece, right?
I mean, split curse is now a thing.
Well, what I more mean is like if you take away One Piece, right? Just look at My Hero Academia. That's been running for 10 years, right? Jujutsu Kaisen 6-7 years. So then, are we going to now maybe see more mangas that are running on like a limited run?
That's why
you think.
That's why I think things like Orb being an 8-volume but succinct beginning, middle, and end. That's why when we talked about like my closet cleanup for like Tsuritama,
I mean,
and how the appeal of a beginning, middle, and end of a succinct, like cohesive package is appealing to me.
Technically, original Chainsaw Man, right? Not the second part, right? Original Chainsaw Man was only 99 chapters.
And technically, if you exclude maybe even like the last panel, right? Or actually argue the end of part 1 could technically be just Chainsaw Man, right?
Yeah.
I would argue. I think Chainsaw Man part 2 was kind of forced on Fujimoto
because of
Sensei.
how popular it was.
And
because look, if the next part, like the high school arc of whatever it's called, if that never existed, like he was just gonna do that and then work on Look Back, Goodbye Eri, listen to another song or whatever it's called, I would be completely fine with it.
I'm also like, we're both behind on Chainsaw Man, so maybe it's dope. Maybe part 2 is dope because he figured something out, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, that is an exception to the rule of the massive amounts of mangas that got axed, of potentially shonen action that never made the light of day.
And that's also indicative of like the business model of Shueisha, in that if you have, like you say, your golden goose, you're going to try and get as much out of it as possible, right? Like I mean, like that's the exact reason why there's a part 2 to Chainsaw Man.
And of all of this, all of this Redux, all of this Shueisha talk, I'm like making gestures so like listeners
just to show the scale of what you're talking about here.
We're only talking about one publisher.
Yeah.
We're not talking about all the other major publishers of Kadokawa,
Kodansha,
Shogakukan. We just talked about probably the most well-known magazine of Weekly Shonen Jump. And we have already like have this much to say or this much to worry or this much to contemplate.
It's just the fact that it is the biggest of the shonen magazines that currently still run. I mean, it's been running
with that strong of an identity too.
It's been running for over 60 years, right? So you would be, that's why like everyone is shitting their britches right now, trying to figure out what the fuck is in store for Weekly Shonen Jump. Because if you had such a storied history in terms of releasing things like fucking Slam Dunk, One Piece, Bleach, Naruto, like just those alone is enough to carry your legacy. But that's what it is. It's your legacy. It's a story that's been told.
Yeah.
And what is left for the next chapter of Weekly Shonen Jump?
Look at Boruto and how successful that is. AKA, it's not really that successful.
I mean, there's still enough people who like it.
There is.
It's the diehard fans, right?
Right. So.
But then again, you're also like, whenever you see anything Naruto themed, it's going to be Naruto, not his shitty son.
Yeah.
That's I think going to continue, where it's like they knew what they had was popular and they knew what they had was a successful business model, and they're going to continue milking it despite the fact that Naruto has been done for 10 years manga wise.
Yeah. But
even though Shippuden actually only finished like a couple years ago, which is still insane for me.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Shippuden actually, like, the last episode came out 2017, 2018. It's not that long ago.
Oh shit! I didn't know. Oh shit! That's like
Makes
7 years ago or something.
Makes you feel old, huh?
It does make me feel.
Yeah,
old.
it ran for 10 years from March 2007 through to February 2007 to March 2017.
Who knows, Will? In terms of maybe we are so fixated on this identity of shonen action with Weekly Shonen Jump that maybe we're making a big deal, or at least people in our age bracket with our storied history with anime and manga.
Because that's what we remember.
Yeah. And then someone who grew up here probably doesn't even give a shit. They'll be like, yeah, Spike's Family's cool, Blue Lock is cool, I'm reading that. And then they don't understand like why it's a big deal that what is this big three thing? Oh, you mean like first, second, third? Like how a lot of hierarchies are being placed? Like I don't get it. And we're just like, no, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal because
it's
part of their business model. It's a marketing thing. It's an advertising thing. And if you were to take that out, then you have to start creating something else to be able to continue having relevance for this particular syndication, for this particular magazine. Otherwise, like, there's no big three. Why do we even bother looking at Weekly Shonen Jump anymore?
It's not Big Three, but it is just Big Me. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. If you understand that reference, good on you and your hip-hop knowledge. If you want... Sorry, I cut you off, Will. Is there anything you want to like leave it off?
Because, no. This is a good time to stop, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I just thought of that really lame-ass like dad joke pun.
Yeah, it worked out.
It did work out. Okay. If you would like to leave us a review or give us your comments. I understand that this Redux might seem a bit more, conversational and less... It sounds like we're going off different tangents, but it's also because it is something that Will and I not only quite deeply care about, despite our feelings on shonen action, we still care about like Weekly Shonen Jump.
We also wish for the best for the state of manga, right?
Also, we fucking love JJK and Demon Slayer and all that stuff too. So don't forget, like, we're weebs as well. And you can tell us all about it if you want through email, gapalette@gmail.com, GAPALETTE, all lowercase, all one word, using the handle @PaletteGood, capital P and capital G, all one word, or go to Discord, and our other social media links are in the show description. We have a website, www.goodanimepalette.com, all lowercase, all one word. Music credits for this episode. Our intro music is Married to the Light by oomiee. Our break music is Green Summer Waves by Qeeo, and our outro music is Weeping by Cushy. You can support the music artists that we feature by listening to them on Spotify, Apple Music, or your music listening platform of choice. And Epidemic Sound provides all of our royalty-free music. If you're interested, you can always use the referral link that is in our show description. Terms and conditions apply. This Redux was something that, like, it felt inevitable that we had to talk about it.
It was 3 years in the making, thanks to Shueisha, because if it was not for their inadequacy, it wasn't for their ineptitude in trying to actually prolong manga series, we wouldn't be able to make something like this. It's always scary to talk about the prospect of the future, especially when the current state of things is like very shaky ground.
And especially when you can't even accurately predict how it will go.
I mean, predictions, as far as it goes, like, they're never accurate, right? You're only running off of what's happening now, and that has no, like, there's no way to be able to accurately predict what will happen
And
next.
just because a broken clock tells time right twice a day does not mean that the clock is working. It's broken. So we can be right about this prediction. We can be wrong. And it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is you listening to our episode of our Redux number 2, about episode 2. And I think, like, a lot of these Reduxes, we will continue to kind of tread new ground by digging up past episodes. And
I mean 3 years ago, right? Like, a lot has changed, and unfortunately not for the better. So it's worth talking about.
And maybe the next Redux we do something like, I think there's always one where, like, Trope, remember that one, that episode of Tropes?
Yeah.
and then instead of a Redux, it's just like us, shitting on tropes that we like annoy the shit out of us. That technically is a remix, I guess.
I'm sure we can find something.
We'll find something, and you will find out what that something is when we reveal it next go around of the GAP Redux. But that's it for me. Will, any parting thoughts?
Not much. Until then, I guess y'all take a nice break, and we will get you all back onto the next episode. So until then, see you later.